If I give someone $100,000 to run for office and he's elected, and I call him after he's elected, don't you think he's going to invite me into his office right away? Mm-hmm. And the lobbying power in the United States is immense. And we're basing our decisions not on informed, thoughtful consideration.
So maybe, given that, in terms of our Earth's environment, things are going to have to get a great deal worse before they get it all better.
Well, I can't imagine things getting worse. I don't know what it's going to take. When 20% of our children are growing up with asthma, that ought to tell us something about the air quality that we've got. When 1 out of 8 women is going to develop breast cancer, that's not genetic, that's environmental. What do we think? You know, breasts are made of fatty tissue, and a lot of chemicals like DDT and dioxin and dieldrin and PCBs, they're lipophilic. They like to go to fatty tissue, and that's why the breasts of women have become like the canaries in the coal mine. They're telling us something's wrong in our environment. What is it going to take when our oceans are collapsing, the climate is warming up? What is it going to take for us to pay attention? I don't get it.
I guess that's a rhetorical question. What is it going to take? Because I don't know the answer to that. Do you?
It's because we don't pay attention to scientists. Mm-hmm. For scientists have been telling us over and over again. You know, and I as a biologist, I think of our evolutionary history. Human beings arose on this planet 150,000 years ago in Africa. And when you think of the environment back then, human beings did not look very impressive. I mean, we were this two-legged, hairless ape surrounded by countless mammals of all kinds. Well, you know, there weren't many of us. We weren't very big or fast or strong. We were a very unprepossessing creature. We've had a remarkable history. How the heck did that two-legged ape take over the planet? Well, of course, the secret of our survival was a brain, and that brain gave us tremendous inventive ability. And the human brain invented this idea called the future. You know, the future doesn't exist. The only thing that exists is now. Mm-hmm. But because the human brain invented the idea of a future, we are the only animal that realized we can affect the future by what we do today. If we look ahead, see where the dangers are, see where the opportunities lie, then we can choose a path into the future that will give us a greater chance for survival. So foresight was a very human characteristic that gave us the advantage, and it got us to where we are today. And today we have all of the predictive ability of scientists and computers and engineers and telecommunications, and we need that foresight more than ever today. You know, for over 20 years, scientists in the United States were telling us that New Orleans was a disaster waiting to happen. When you build a city in the heart of hurricane country and half of the city is below sea level, you're asking for trouble. And they said eventually there's going to be a Force 5 hurricane hit New Orleans, and if you want to avoid a catastrophe, this is what you've got to do. And nobody did anything, and so guess what? The future happened, and we didn't pay attention, and Katrina happened, and disaster. So even though we're very sophisticated today, we need to use foresight more than ever. And our scientists have been telling us we're on a deadly path. And now we say, oh, but it'll destroy the economy. Oh, we can't do that. We're going to have to go out of business if we do that. So we're failing to pay attention to what scientists say. And we're failing to use the only survival strategy that got us to where we are now, the ability to look ahead.
David, in your new book, David Suzuki, the autobiography, you say you'd like to provide an action component. So for our listeners, what's the action component here? Here's the problem, and we're not using our foresight. What can we do?
Well, a lot of people, of course, they know that we're in trouble. They look around, they can see the changes, and they know something's wrong. And so they come to me all the time, and they say, well, what can I do? I'm insignificant. I'm one person out of 6.7 billion people. What difference does it make what I do? And they want to do something that will have an effect. So my foundation, the David Suzuki Foundation, got together with the Union of Concerned Scientists, this organization in the United States, and we said, where do individual people have the greatest impact on nature or the environment? And it was right away we realized it's what we eat, how we move, transportation, and where we live. So food, transportation, and housing is where we focused on, and we came up with a list of the 10 most effective things that every one of us can do. Now, I have to admit, when they came to me with the list the first time, I threw it on the floor. I said, come on, get serious. This is too easy. But then they showed me the scientific reasoning behind each of the suggestions, and I'm now convinced these are the 10 most effective things we can do. And they're very simple. If you eat meat, give up meat 1 day a week. You know, if you're a Catholic, you know that's the way it used to be all the time. If you take a car to work or school or play, leave the car at home 1 day a week. If we say try to make your house more energy efficient so you reduce your energy bill by 10%, well, you're going to make money then. When you're buying a new household appliance, a hot water tank, a refrigerator, an electric kettle, look at the energy guide that tells you how energy efficient that is, and get the most energy efficient appliance you can get. They're very practical, simple things, but they if many of us do it, we can have a real impact. We've got 300,000 Canadians who have now signed up and have said, I'm going to try to do at least 3 of these 10 things in the coming year.
And among the other 10 of the Nature Challenge, buy locally grown and produced food.
Yes.
Choose a fuel efficient.
Don't use pesticides around the house. Mm-hmm. And one of the most important things is to apply your democratic principles. Write politicians, phone them, go to all candidates' meetings and raise environmental issues. Each of us can have an impact, or has an impact, but we need leadership at the political level as well, because politicians have to show leadership. They have to begin to pass laws that encourage corporations to do the right things. We need leadership at that level, and we as voters have to begin to use that responsibility.
So if sufficient numbers of us did all these 10 things, plus contacting our representatives and would that make a big difference?
Of course. Mm-hmm. Could have a huge impact. And, I remind people that Margaret Mead said, never despair that a group of dedicated, informed individuals can make a difference. In fact, that's the only way change has come about. And I agree with her. It's got to start at the level of the grassroots, and we've got to show by what we want that we make change happen. Mm-hmm. And, in 1988, I interviewed a young American senator and for a radio series, and he sent shivers up my back. I had never met a politician that understood the environmental problems as deeply as he did. And at the end, and it was Al Gore, by the way. He was a senator from Tennessee at that time. And at the end of my interview, I put down my microphone. I said, Senator, how can journalists like me help politicians like you? And he said, don't look to politicians like me. He said, if you want to bring about change, you've got to convince the public there's a problem. Show them that there are things that can be done. Show them there are alternatives. And get them to care enough so they demand that change be made. He said, when that happens, every politician will jump on the bandwagon. And I'm absolutely convinced he was right, and that's what's got to be done. We at the grassroots have to begin to see what the situation is, look at the alternatives, and demand that our so-called leaders in politics and business begin to do the right things.